think you have to remember that trends are tools to use. They're not the end goal. Glassmorphism, or what is now called liquid glass, Apple's first example or first version of it in the beta, didn't pass accessibility standards. Even when you put your phone into accessibility mode, it still failed.
Of course, this gave rise to your biggest LinkedIn post of the year, as you stepped up and made some mild criticism of Apple and started a war.
You also need to consider things like micro interactions. So, but yeah, that's exactly it. But if it just tell me that to a vibration or a flash of the button, Instagram does it really well. Well, when you press the heart button, it flashes once to say, I know that you pressed me, and then it comes back to say, okay, your action has now been submitted and it's done, it was successful. That's all it needs. And that is based in psychology of people needing to get feedback.
Saw a great tip the other day of when you register to a website, put down your name as first name and then the website you've registered to. So then when they sell your data on, you can see who it is they've sold it to and trace it back.
That's terrible.
Welcome to the latest and greatest Sonin podcast. Very excited about today because we are delving into one of the areas of the business that I am the least competent in, but is probably one of the most interesting parts of it as well. So over the years, I've delved into most departments. You've managed to resist that completely, probably for the good of all products. Yep. So today I'm joined by Sarah, who is our head of product and design here at Sonin, and we're going to delve a little bit into what good design looks like, and how it isn't just about what things look like, but it's a mechanism for how we can guide and help users and businesses fulfill their objectives. Because nowadays design is thought of as something a little bit more than just visuals, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So to kick off with, over to you to do a bit of an intro of yourself.
I always love this bit. So I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I've worked across all different sectors and all sorts. I actually started as an e-commerce specialist, designing all sorts of e-commerce shops, from handbags, which was great as a woman. I got to see a lot of handbags, shoes, all sorts. I then moved actually into the print industry. I got to design a lovely wine bottle, which it was great to taste the wine. That's probably my favourite project so far in some ways.
Yeah, I can understand that one.
Yeah. A few years ago now, should we say, I ventured into specialising in product and app design specifically. And that's me.
I love that. Very, very well positioned a few years ago. All right, thank you. So as we kind of touched on in the intro, design is obviously constantly evolving and changing. So probably a nice lightweight question to start with, just so we can complete the whole podcast in one go. What does great digital design look like in 2025? And maybe how has it evolved over the years?
Huge question. But I think the biggest change, especially over probably this year, is the Accessibilities Act. So in June, new legislation was put out that everyone has to meet a certain level of accessibility. It has to be, any product out there has to be inclusive. So you have to think things like screen readers. You have to consider both visual and physical impairments, which, considering the amount of people that have some form of impairment in the world, that act coming in was such an important move for design. This is maybe a little bit controversial because a lot of people say, actually 15, 20 years ago, this did exist. It just wasn't as quite prominent and shouted about, but purposeful design. So whereas before you'd do a lot of kind of flashy visuals that didn't really go to anything, now it's a lot about kind of the outcome driven design, making sure that you're helping that business achieve impact. You can still do your flashy visuals, they just need to do something for the business or the user that you're designing for. We all use different products now as well, like physical products. So you've got your watch, you've got your Mac, you've got your phone, tablets, and especially in the consumer space, people are expecting a completely seamless experience across those devices. So when you go from your phone to your watch, you get what you need when you need it. Obviously, there are trends that come and go, some that stay, but we always have to make sure that those kind of are balanced with the usability of the product, and making sure that that trend has longevity. So it's not one of those that's going to go away in 6 months.
And I mean, I've sat with you in enough client meetings talking about accessibility and the like as well. And it is interesting because I think there was a period of time where it was almost people thinking of it from just a consumer facing app point of view. But of course, as you said, there's a huge percentage of people with some kind of impairment. And therefore, if you're building internally as well, it's just as important to make sure that your internal, that your employees, that your team have a great experience as well. And you've talked to me in the past as well about the fact that accessible design is great for everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
It's more than just for accessibility's sake. It actually produces better results everywhere.
It does. I mean, if it's usable by everyone, it is usable by everyone, and it just heightens that experience even more. There's a stat around how 90% of people's time is spent on other people's platforms. So if you make sure yours aligned to all of those platforms that are using those accessibility standards, that are using the flows and experiences, your product is more accessible and easier to use.
And you also talked in there about kind of cross-device continuity. I mean, it's one of the, like, Apple obviously fantastic at this, but increasingly, everybody's everywhere across TVs, laptops, phones, watches. How do you challenge that one as a design challenge? Or how do you tackle that as a design challenge?
Understanding the context of how the user is using that product. So Apple Health is actually the perfect example of this. As you said, they do it very well because they've built the physical products themselves. But if you think of Apple Health, you go onto your phone and there's loads of data on there. So you can see all sorts from what you did 2 minutes ago to what you did last week, your steps or your lack of steps, your heart rate, all sorts. When you look on your watch, it's just the key information, because all you care about at that point is, okay, my heart rate has suddenly increased, or, oh, good, I've just met my step count, hopefully.
I don't get that one so much. Nice, thank you. And so, I mean, talking about Apple, we are just recently, we've seen iOS 26 and obviously design changes and everything coming out across there. One of the things that's obviously a big part of design is that trends emerge and come and go. So how do you go about kind of maximizing and capitalizing on design trends and everything that they bring as an opportunity, whilst also balancing that with business needs?
I think you have to remember that trends are tools to use. They're not the end goal. They should support clarity of your UI and of your product. It should support your brand. So if you've got a very flat brand sticking over liquid glass, for example, or loads of drop shadows, it's probably going to be very jarring for the user. You need to think around the context of how those people are using it. Is it something in that we're in a busy environment, very data heavy that they're looking at? Probably don't want loads of flashy deep gradients and colours, or like back when it was skeuomorphism was a trend. Probably don't want to use all those gradients that go with skeuomorphism.
Some of us skeuomorphisms would never have gone.
I think for designers it should have. But you really need to consider whether it's going to help the user achieve what they're trying to do. You do need to consider that longevity of the trend as well. So is it something that's going to be here in a couple of years, or is it going to be something that's going to disappear in 6 months? And on sort of the flip side of that is it actually technically feasible to do within a sensible budget? Glassmorphism, or what is now called liquid glass, has been around for many, many years. But actually it was never technically feasible. You could do it. It would just take a lot of development budget, and it didn't give the impact in terms of the business impact. So it just wasn't worth it. It is now feasible. But it doesn't necessarily meet accessibility standards. So if we think back to that kind of the change we've got with the legislation, you need to be really careful in how you use it. Apple's first example or first version of it in the beta didn't pass accessibility standards. Even when you put your phone into accessibility mode, it still failed. Therefore, you shouldn't be using it at that point. They have now started to improve it and iterations are better. And you're seeing how designers are actually implementing that. And they're using it in particular ways that you can avoid those accessibility issues.
And of course, this gave rise to your biggest LinkedIn post of the year, as you stepped up and made some mild criticism of Apple and started a war.
Yes, yeah, it was an interesting time. 80,000 impressions and however many comments later, and hours of not sleeping because my phone is pinging of notifications. But it was a good discussion to have because it raised the issue. And I think you do need to raise the issues because Apple is leading design. I love their design. I think they've got some stunning designers. But if you don't raise up those issues, then it could turn out that then they don't fix them. So I'm pleased I was part of the fixing the problems.
Part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Say.
Yeah.
Note to self: careful criticising Apple or Elon Musk.
Yes.
The two parties to steer clear of publicly.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So we've talked a lot about trends and different things in there. One of the things that you've kind of talked about in there and talked about a lot is around clarity in design. Why does that matter? Why is that important?
This is where I harp on about the thing that I always say, and I think people get sick of me talking about, but it's cognitive load. I should have sort of shares or something in the phrase because I say it so much.
So I should get you a t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it is that it's if you've got a low clarity score on your product or on a particular screen, that means you've got a high cognitive load. So it makes it really what that means is a user doesn't quite understand or might not understand quickly how to use that screen or what they need to do because it's taking them too long to process all of the information. We actually use an AI eye tracking tool to help us score that clarity and make sure that people are looking where we want them to look, and we keep that cognitive load as low as we can. You can never get zero cognitive load because that's essentially a white page, which isn't particularly useful. But if you do have cognitive load or low cognitive load, that means you've got higher adoption because people can find it's easier to use. That equals better retention. And obviously for the end business, that's a stronger return on investment as well.
So we say cognitive load a lot there. Talk us through a little bit. What is, for people that don't know, what is cognitive load?
So if we think of our brains like a computer, there's only so much computer can do at one time before it kind of holds up and goes, whoa, I can't do any more, and it crashes. Our brain is very similar to that. And if you're trying to process a lot of information, it just can't do it as quickly as if you're trying to process little information. And information can be in the form of colours, text, data, all of that equals to information that your brain has to process. An easy kind of real world scenario is if you're walking down the street and you're about to cross a road, your cognitive load is high because you need to watch the cars. If you've got children with you, you're making sure they're safe. You have a high cognitive load, lots going on around you, lots of danger. If you are sat on your sofa at home, you've got a low cognitive load because there's nothing really going on around you. You might be watching TV, but you've got enough room in your brain to have other things going on.
Nice. And I guess that's super important in our world, right? In the world of digital products and mobile, because it's all about context of use and where you are and what you're up to as well. It's a bit different to back when I started and there's a box on the screen and off you go. You're in an office and there's no other stuff there. Well, we talked about the context of use. We talked about things that are going on around us. We talked about user behaviour and understanding what they're up to. So outside of obviously what our account director calls the colouring in department. There's obviously a lot more to it than that. And how much of great design now is around the psychology and the user behaviour and everything else in there?
You really, as a designer, need to understand mental models, heuristics, attention, user motivation. Once you know all of that, you can predict friction points. You can, in terms of business, if you're reducing those friction points, you're helping that increase that return on investment, because there's less rework where a user goes, oh, I don't know how to do this. We have to revisit it. It is all about understanding the context of the user and how people's brains work, even to how people use a phone with their hand. So we do thumb reachability tests because, and I did a study at one point a few years back where we tested how people actually used their thumb and the shape of the thumb, and we then redesigned a timer where you could go in a circle rather than a cross, because that was an easier thumb movement. And so understanding all of that allows you to create an interface that is better and easier to use inherently. You also need to consider things like micro interactions. So at the moment I've got my remote for my TV has stopped working, so I've downloaded the app, which is great that we have an app that I can control my TV with. But when I press any of the buttons, they don't actually do anything. It has registered, but it doesn't tell me it's registered. So I just keep there pressing because I don't think anything's happening. And then it just keeps stopping and starting or going backwards. And
get tapping on the play pause button, which is obviously a toggle. You just, and then 5 seconds later, they all slowly work their way through and the TV catches up.
Yeah.
You get a stuttering version of Coronation Street.
Sure. I've not watched that in many years, but sure, we'll go with that one. But yeah, that's exactly it. But if it just tell me that through a vibration or a flash of the button, Instagram does it really well, where when you press the heart button, it flashes once to say, I know that you've pressed me. And then it comes back to say, okay, your action has now been submitted and it's done, it was successful. That's all it needs. And that is based in psychology of people needing to get feedback. You also need to consider the ethical side of things as well. So ethical UX, making sure that you're not leading people through those psychological cues of using gradients or drop shadows or whatever it is to lead people to a button in an ethical way. And then you're not falling down the manipulating a user route. But they're kind of the main ways that we use psychology.
Because the ethical piece is, this is the bit that hit the news a number of months or maybe even a year ago around kind of dark UX patterns, right?
Yeah.
And essentially trying to manipulate the user for short-term gain at the cost of essentially trust.
Yeah, it is. So dark patterns are all about leading the user to something that they might not want to do, or subscribing to something without actually telling them. When you are considering leading a user to something, you need to ask, am I doing this for their benefit, or is it purely just for the business benefit? Can I ethically describe why I'm doing this? Or is it just to make the business more money?
Yeah.
If you can answer those questions honestly, then you should go ahead and do it. If not, you should probably push back. It is the responsibility of the designer to push back on their product strategists to go, hold on, this isn't in the benefit of the user. We're not telling them that they're subscribing to £100 a month.
Yeah.
And then you work with your product strategist to find the equal ground to keep it ethical.
It's a little bit like when I'm trying to cancel my audiobook subscription and I go through 3 screens, and the final screen, the yes cancel button is just in plain text quietly in the corner, and the big brown button is the one that says change your subscription to half price for 3 months in the place that you've just been tapping, and then you tap and you're in for another 3 months.
What they've done is they've looked at that, seen that they use that particular button in a way, that primer button in a way, and they've decided they're going to tweak it slightly to not help the user. So that possibly wasn't ethical.
Yeah. But I've only got 6 weeks left, so it'll be fine. And then we'll do it again. Right, lovely. So we kind of talked in there a little bit about the fact that design is there to help businesses achieve their objectives, and obviously we all know that design is all about helping our clients build the right product, which is where objectives and user needs intersect. We won't do the X factor bit.
No.
One of the big bits, obviously, when you're building a digital product, is getting people in the first place, so you can actually help them achieve whatever it is that they need to achieve. And a massive part of that is that initial onboarding. Downloaded the app, what now stuff. But yet this is so often overlooked. It's an afterthought or not a thought at all. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about why it matters so much in the first place.
It goes back to we are all humans, and first impressions matter. So when you meet someone for the first time, you judge them based on their look, how they talk, their job title. It is just what we do as humans. It's the same for your product. So that first impression of them, once they've downloaded the app and they're actually in it, it sets the tone for the relationship between you and your user. It builds the trust, or doesn't build the trust potentially, and it can affect that retention trajectory as well. So if you aren't telling and showing the users, guiding them to and onboarding them to the value moments in your product, they're not going to be retained. If you're eroding that trust early by just taking their money without giving them anything in return, they're not going to be retained, and you've just given a bad first impression. That is the point where users decide whether this product is worth their time, because people do value their time, and it is that perceived value. We are really greedy as humans. We don't like to give anything away, even if it's just time, without getting anything in return. And it's the same for any product, whether it's an internal tool or a consumer facing tool. But all of that, if you can onboard them to the product, lead them to that value, show them the value, it'll reduce the drop-off rates, and increase future sort of retention, or feature adoption, and possibly upsells as well.
I think that's super interesting, because I think maybe when we started in non-specific years ago in product design, the obviously freemium kind of came along as a way of trying to lower barriers and get people in and onboarded and using the platform. But now people are much more considerate of their own data, aren't they?
Yeah.
So whereas maybe 5-8 years ago or something, people wouldn't have necessarily seen a login or a register at the start as being a massive barrier. It's a huge barrier now, isn't it, to people getting onboarded, and you have to prove the value before you're anywhere near asking for somebody's email address and password.
Yeah. All the data leaks have led to that. As soon as the news starts shouting about, okay, your data has been used in this way, or you look in your emails and you see 50,000 newsletters that you never subscribe to, all of that makes you feel more protective, and that leads to you wanting something in return before actually giving someone anything.
Saw a great tip the other day of when you register to a website, put down your name as first name and then the website you've registered to, so that then when they sell your data on, you can see who it is they've sold it to and trace it back.
That's terrifying.
Cool. Okay, so design is a force for helping businesses achieve their objectives. It's not just about looking great and being really exciting for the end user. So can you give us an example of maybe a small design change that's had a big impact?
Yeah, we've had one not too long ago in all fairness with a client who they have a really complex form that's very contextual, and it actually, if it's not completed in the right way, it has quite big business ramifications in terms of legal. It has to be completed, otherwise they don't fall in line with the law, and obviously that can be a little bit of an issue for businesses. And so they came to saying, okay, we've got this problem, they're not filling it out properly, we're not getting the data that we need, so we want to redesign the entire form. Now that would have been a couple of sprints worth of work. Instead, we jumped on a call, tried to discuss and understand where the issue actually lied. And in the end, all we needed to do was change a toggle. And it was the very first toggle on the page, and it's all fixed. So instead of spending those 2 to 3 sprints, we probably spent maybe a day or two fixing that. And then that budget could be used on something else that would provide value.
Yeah. So I guess some of this is it then kind of falls into that seeing context of use. I know you like to do ride-alongs with clients to see stuff in practice, whether that's debt collecting or sailing on a ship in the North Sea.
Yeah.
But by seeing the form in use, you can actually get into the weeds of what's actually happening rather than just the first thoughts that maybe stakeholders have.
Yeah. We talk about it in product strategy a lot, but it applies in design as well, in that you shouldn't base design decisions on assumptions.
Yeah.
You should look how users are actually using the tool, and base decisions on that. That is going to provide you a better end solution.
Nice. Well, obviously, your job title is head of product and design, and we're going to do another one of these, hopefully. If you haven't changed your mind across the course of this one, you're going to come and do another one where we're going to talk a little bit more about product strategy rather than the design side of things. But of course, like we've talked about how design drives towards objectives. I think I've said that about 5 times. And so product strategy and design are obviously very close together in helping businesses get what they need. So where is the line? How do you define the boundary between the two sides?
I think you have to remember that the design is about helping the user succeed. So if you take purely a designer and say, go design a delete account button. Now they're thinking, well, the user's goal at that point is to delete their account, so I'm going to stick it on the front screen in a big red button that's flashing. And product strategy is there to ensure that that product succeeds and meets the business goals. And that's where that crossover is, because a product strategist would be sat there going, whoa, we cannot have that delete account button because we want to retain those users. We don't want to keep shouting at people to delete their account. So they would have a discussion and they would decide, okay, well, we'll stick it one menu down in the profile, and it would be a tertiary style button at the bottom of the page. So it's not there in your face, but it is easy to find. And that's the difference there. So they complement each other to make sure that we're achieving both what the user needs and what the business needs.
Nice. Thank you. Awesome. That was really good. Thank you. Last but not least, the most exciting part where producer Greg gets to demonstrate his fantastic creative side. He has come up with the quickfire questions for you. He's been inspirational this time around. So your first question is, what is your favourite app design right now?
Airbnb. Just
nice. Because of holidays.
Holidays. They always, I mean, it's really easy to make a good app on holidays because you just put a photo of a beach and you want to go. But actually their design is really clean. They use their brand in an amazing way. So their red isn't actually accessible. So you'll notice that a lot of their buttons are actually black rather than the red. And they have found a way to make 3D icons animate through. They've built an entire render engine, which was not possible before. You could do a flat icon animation, but you couldn't make a hot air balloon that looks 3D move around the page. And the fact you can do that now is just cool. It is just cool.
Yeah. Wicked. Okay, question number 2. What is the design trend that you'd love to see disappear?
The fear of wrath again.
Oh no.
I have to say right this second, whilst it's still growing and it's still learning how to be used in production, would be liquid glass or glass morphism. It's not yet at that point if we think of that accessibility and making our products inclusive. It's not at the point, I don't think, where we should be using it freely in our products just for accessibility. Once we've got that sorted, I think we should go all in. But right now it's just not quite accessible enough.
We'll look forward to the comment stream lighting up on that one. And then last but not least, one timeless design principle.
It's got to be the clarity. You have to have a design that people can understand and not get confused by. So it has to be clarity.
Nice. Good. Well, thank you very much. So just to kind of track back over what we've talked about today, and you can fill in the blanks where I've missed them. We've talked about the importance of design in helping users get to their goals and what they want to achieve, and its role for the business as well. We've talked a lot about accessible design and how accessible design is good for everybody as a key trend today. We have talked about it from the point of view of that design isn't really just design. It's about psychology and user behaviour as well, that it can be a tool for good as well as a tool for bad, and that really there's a thin line between design and product strategy, because it's all there to help achieve the ultimate thing, which is building the right product.
Absolutely.
Did I miss anything?
No, nailed it.
Amazing. Happy days. Well, thank you very much for coming. I do hope you're going to be back shortly and you're not going to run off and change your mind.
We'll see.
Right, cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.